U.S. and Israel discuss potential tactical pauses in Gaza fighting. Jordan airdrops medical supplies into Gaza. France to give armored vehicles to Lebanese army. Russian nuclear submarine tests intercontinental missile. IMF warns Nigeria as its Chinese debt rises to $4.73 billion. Singapore's prime minister plans to step down. Volodymyr Zelensky invites Donald Trump to Ukraine. Rwanda announces visa-free travel for all Africans.
Hello, I'm Johnny. Thank you for joining us on Funday News. It's Tuesday, November 7th, and here are your top stories. Reuters reported that during talks on Monday, U.S. President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu discussed the potential for tactical pauses in fighting in Gaza for humanitarian reasons and possible hostage releases. White House spokesperson John Kirby said the U.S. and Israeli governments would continue to be in touch on such potential temporary pauses and that Biden and Netanyahu agreed to continue talks in the coming days.
Kirby told reporters, "You can expect that we're going to continue to advocate for temporary and localized pauses in the fighting." Kirby said those conversations came as more aid entered the territory on Monday. The White House said that fewer than 30 aid trucks entered Gaza in the last 24 hours. Reuters said the White House, which maintains that a general ceasefire would not be an appropriate step, has been pushing for shorter pauses in strikes to accomplish specific humanitarian goals.
Jordanian King Abdullah II said early on Monday that the Jordanian Air Force had dropped medical supplies over the Gaza Strip. On X, King Abdullah said, "Our fearless Air Force personnel airdropped at midnight urgent medical aid to the Jordanian field hospital in Gaza." He wrote, "This is our duty to aid our brothers and sisters injured in the war in Gaza." It was unclear whether the aid suppliers reached the hospital or whether the operation was carried out with Israel's knowledge or approval.
The Jordanian king's post included photos of a crate draped in the Jordanian national flag being loaded into an Air Force transport plane. Israel is demanding that all aid supplies, which have so far only reached the south of the Gaza Strip via the Egyptian Rafah border crossing, be checked. The Israeli army says this is to prevent weapons from being smuggled to the Islamist Hamas movement. Aid organizations say that the aid supplies that have so far reached the Gaza Strip are nowhere near enough.
France's Defense Minister Sébastien Lecornu said in remarks published on Monday that France will send dozens of armored vehicles to the Lebanese army so it can properly carry out patrol missions in the country. Speaking to Lebanon's L'Orient Le Jour newspaper after a trip to the country, Lecornu said it was vital to beef up the Lebanese National Army so that it could better coordinate with the United Nations peacekeeping force as tensions mount between Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah in southern Lebanon.
Lecornu added, "Our support for the Lebanese army is for the long term, whatever the current difficulties." He said, "We will pursue our partnership with military equipment, notably for the transport of troops protected by armor, which is key to maintain patrols," adding that several dozen armored vehicles would be given to the Lebanese army soon. He said Paris will also provide medicines and is setting up a joint program to purchase medical supplies at reasonable prices for the Lebanese army in the future.
The Russian Defense Ministry said on Sunday that Russia's new strategic nuclear submarine, the Imperial Alexander III, has successfully tested a Bulava intercontinental ballistic missile. The Defense Ministry said the missile, which the Federation of American Scientists says is designed to carry up to 6 nuclear warheads, was launched from an underwater position in the White Sea off Russia's northern coast and hit a target thousands of kilometers away on the Kamchatka Peninsula in the Russian Far East.
According to Russian sources, the Imperator Alexander III is the 7th of the Russian Project 955 Bore, Arctic Wind, class nuclear submarines and the 4th of the modernized Bore, a variant. They are known in NATO as the Dolgoruki class of submarines, after the first boat, the Yuri Dolgoruki, became the first new generation of nuclear submarine launched by Russia since the Cold War. The Bore-class submarine is armed with 16 Bulava missiles. The 12-meter missile has a range of about 8,000 kilometers.
The International Monetary Fund has cautioned Nigeria and other sub-Saharan African countries over the risks of close economic ties with China. The warning issued in the latest IMF Regional Economic Outlook on Sub-Saharan Africa is coming amid reports that Nigeria's debt to China had risen to $4.73 billion as of June 30th, 2023. The IMF warned that dangers lie ahead, noting that the recent slowdown in economic growth in China will have adverse effects on trading partners in Sub-Saharan Africa, including Nigeria.
In Analytical Notes, titled At a Crossroads, Sub-Saharan Africa's Economic Relations with China, the IMF noted that sub-Saharan African countries have forged broadly beneficial economic ties with China over the last 2 decades, adding that China has become the region's largest trading partner, a major credit provider, and a significant source of foreign direct investment. The IMF noted, recently, China has retrenched its financing activities in sub-Saharan Africa amid a growth slowdown and reduced risk appetite.
Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong said Sunday he planned to bow out and hand over power to his deputy, Lawrence Wong, late next year, before the 2025 general election. Lee, 71, initially intended to retire before turning 70, but it was shelved because of the COVID-19 pandemic. He has served as head of the long-ruling People's Action Party, or PAP, and as prime minister since 2004. Last year, he named Wong, who is also finance minister, as his designated successor.
Lee said at a party conference, "I have full confidence in Lawrence and his team, and there's no reason to delay their political transition. Therefore, I intend to hand it over to DPM, Deputy Prime Minister, Lawrence before the next general election." He said passing the baton to Wong before the national polls will allow the 50-year-old politician to win his own mandate and take the country forward. Lee said, "If all goes well, I will hand over to Wong by Pap's 70th birthday next year, in November 2024.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky called on the U.S. to provide more funding to help his forces counter Russia and invited former U.S. President Donald Trump to fly in to see the scale of the conflict for himself. Zelensky said American soldiers could eventually be pulled into a greater European conflict with Russia if Washington did not step up support. Zelensky said, "If Russia will kill all of us, they will attack NATO countries, and you will send your sons and daughters to fight."
In the interview airing on Sunday, Zelensky invited former U.S. President Donald Trump, a Republican, to visit Ukraine and see the fallout of the conflict initiated by Russia's President Vladimir Putin in February 2022. According to a transcript of an interview with NBC's Meet the Press airing on Sunday, Zelensky said, "If he can come here, I will need 24 minutes to explain to President Trump that he can't manage this war. He can't bring peace because of Putin."
Rwanda announced last Thursday that it will allow Africans to travel visa-free to the country, becoming the latest nation on the continent to announce such a measure aimed at boosting free movement of people and trade to rival Europe's Schengen zone. Rwanda's President Paul Kagame said during the 23rd Global Summit of the World Travel and Tourism Council, any African can get on a plane to Rwanda whenever they wish, and they will not pay a thing to enter our country.
According to data from the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, Rwanda President Paul Kagame made the announcement in the Rwandan capital, Kigali, where he pitched the potential of Africa as a unified tourism destination for a continent that still relies on 60% of its tourists from outside Africa. Kagame said, "Africans are the future of global tourism as our middle class continues to grow at a fast pace in the decades to come. We should not lose sight of our own continental market." The answer for yesterday was A, casualty. There are fears that the casualty toll may be higher. Did you answer correctly? Now let's delve into the news of Russian nuclear submarine testing intercontinental missile. Number 1, strategic, 策略性的, 战略性的. Milta was of vital strategic importance during the war. Number 2, ballistic, 弹道的, 发射的. He went ballistic when I told him. Number 3, peninsula, 半岛. The boat was anchored off the northern coast of the peninsula. Next, we have a multiple choice question for everyone to practice. Which answer would you choose? You can write your answer in the comments section. The correct answer will be announced tomorrow. And that's all for today's Funday News. Be sure to tune into Funday News from Monday to Friday and click the link below to join Funday for free. I'm Johnny Wu, your host. I'll see you next time.